And thanks again for everyone who's just joining us. We're just waiting a few more moments as folks start to weigh in. Thanks for everyone's patience. A few of us are still without power. And so we are managing as best as we can. In fact, I am talking to you from my vehicle right now. So we'll we'll do the best we can. I know our facilitator, Dr. Roberta Hunt, she's also without power, and she'll be calling in just a few moments as well.
I'm here, Janelle. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah.
And
I'm here. I can't see anyone.
Okay, no problem. Were you able to get the agenda okay?
Yeah, I got the agenda. I'm good.
Okay. So Dr. Hunt, I think maybe we'll wait just a couple more moments before we get kicked off. I know folks are negotiating the weather as best they can, and maybe we just start in a few more moments.
Okay, great.
Jake, maybe give us the green light when you think we've reached a significant number of EAG members to go ahead and progress.
Well, obviously the best ones are here. Don't tell the others.
I gotta say, this is very different doing this without being able to see either the slides or the faces.
I will try to help with that, Roberta. This will be interesting.
Okay. So, Jake, I'm relying on you a lot.
I'm up to the task.
Oh, geez.
I'm assuming that's a laugh of confidence.
Yes, it is 100. I know that voice. Whose voice is that? Oh, that's
Greg
Greg
Johnson.
That's Greg's voice.
Am I the only one who didn't have power outage?
It sounds like it, Greg. So good thing you're not in St. John's. Roberta and I are both out in North Portland, and we both are out without power. So
You guys.
I heard that Vancouver was out too.
Well, my dad lives in Vancouver, at least in Fisher's Landing, and he had plenty of power, so I think he's okay.
Is that because of snow?
Yeah, snow and ice. Yeah.
Well,
down power lines, down trees, all the like.
I think like 100,000, or it's like I think like 200,000 people are without power.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Hi, everybody.
I think I have 11 inches already, and they say another 4 to 9 tonight.
Are coming?
I'm in Chicago.
That's in Chicago.
Oh, Chicago.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we're not like that. We're not like Chicago. That's the whole point. That's why we live here.
Roberta,
And there's wind gusts, so you can't see anything out the window right now.
Oh, wow.
Roberta, why don't we go ahead and get started, and maybe you can welcome, and then we'll also have our program administrator, Greg Johnson, welcome.
Right. Okay, so this is Roberta here. I feel like I'm a radio announcer. This is Roberta Hunt, live from my child's bedroom. And we are doing this thing. We are building a bridge. I love it. Okay, so hi, everybody. It's so good to see or hear you all, to be in community with you. And thank you for your efforts in coming here. I think there's many hands that have made it possible for us to be together right now. And so we're having our second meeting of the Equity Advisory Group. And tonight we are covering a lot of ground, which is why we're persevering in having our meeting. We need to talk a little bit about just our decision making. We're coming back to that, seeking feedback related to the community engagement approach, thinking about equity as a collective, kind of what are some of our guiding principles, and our purpose and need, our contribution to the purpose and need for this project. So we have a lot of work to do from now till 7:30. Thank you for being here. Our program administrator, Greg Johnson, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Roberta. Well,
Yeah.
once again, welcome everybody. And I want to thank everybody who's making a way, whether it's with little or no Wi-Fi or no power. We all know how inconvenient that can be. So thank you so much for persevering and being a part of this meeting. So I just want to echo what Dr. Hunt said. This is, we are moving into some key critical decisions that for the program that we're looking for this team to help guide us, to give us input on. So your attention to some of the issues and asking questions is going to be key to make sure you understand everything that's put together, and developing that definition of what equity means for this program, once again, is going to be key. So just want to welcome you all. Thank you for your attention and your participation.
And Roberta, I actually should run through the closed captioning and that stuff real quick.
Please.
Let me share my screen.
And maybe I have one request, and that's just because I can't see everyone. And really, this would probably be good protocol going forward for us, if people could just say their name before they speak, before they say what they need to say.
Thank you, Roberta. This is Jake. So closed captions, I put up the slide with those instructions. So we do have that option for anyone who needs them. They're available both in Zoom and YouTube for those who are watching on YouTube, which, just as a reminder to everyone, that this is a publicly viewable meeting. We'll have time for public comment later. We'll get there. Closed captions, if you need to access them, there's a button at the bottom of your Zoom screen that right next to your raise hand feature. And thank you to our closed captioner, Tamara, who's here and making that all possible. I think a lot of us are familiar with Zoom, but just we want to encourage EAG members to turn on your video. It helps us kind of feel more like we're in a real group, real meeting. So if you're comfortable with that, we would love to see your face as we chat here. Please keep your audio on mute when not speaking. And there's a phone number there. And Brent, is that the correct number for you? 253?
No, that is not the correct number.
Okay. Let me update that. What is the correct number to call you if technical difficulties?
253-380-4457.
445 what?
4457.
Cool. So that is, once again, 253-380-4457. There's going to be an opportunity for public input, like I mentioned. We'll put instructions up there again on this. You can also email public comments to info@interstatebridge.org, or you can call 360-905-1560 and state EAG public comment in your message, and we check those and we respond to those. All right, so now we're to meeting agenda, Roberta, which you walked us through. So I feel like we can go to the first section here, which is media protocols, and we were going to have our public information officer, Kellyanne, who is experiencing power outages. So in her place, we have Lisa Shower, who's our strategic communications lead.
Thank you, Jake. I am definitely not Kellyanne, so I will run through the slides with you. We think this is really important to talk a little bit about our media outreach as it relates to our advisory groups, and in particular our EAG. So if you want to go ahead and flip to the next slide. This is Kellyanne's contact information, and we can send that out to the whole group. And I'm sure when she's able to, hopefully at your next meeting, she'll be able to pop in and you can get a face to a name. She has a tremendous background in media relations and is a real asset to have on the program. So go ahead and go to the next slide, Jake. So these are a few tips and some things to think about. We do anticipate that you may receive inquiries from our news media. We want you to feel prepared should you receive any sort of outreach from a news outlet. We would encourage you to contact Kellyanne. She's here to help in any way. A few tips about reporters. They're not your enemy or your friend. They're just trying to do their job, which is getting their story and sound bites for quotes. They may seem negative, and that's because they deal with news, both good and bad, and don't take it personally. She often talks about kind of the 3 C's: consequential, controversial, and curious. Oftentimes reporters from the media will be looking for something consequential. They'll be looking for something that might be controversial, and they're going to be curious. So they're going to ask you a lot of questions. And many of you have probably already experienced a call from a reporter, perhaps in some of the work that you're doing. And we just want you to feel as prepared as possible and to recognize nothing is ever off the record. So kind of keep that in mind when you start to have a conversation. Next slide. So as a volunteer for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, we want to make sure that you also understand that your opinions are your own and that you do not represent the official position of the program. So this is important just in terms of who we do tend to have speak on behalf of the program is Greg, who you know. He's our program administrator, and we really are hoping that, especially when it relates to any inquiries from the media, that Greg has the opportunity to speak with the media and to answer any questions as the representative on behalf of the program. That doesn't mean, though, that you might not want to share what you're thinking and what you're feeling about what you are hearing and participating in, and that's okay. We just want to make sure that there's a real separation in terms of you speaking on behalf of the program versus just using your own thoughts and opinions when you are having that conversation. Kellyanne would recommend that you listen, that you take your time to respond to a question, that if you need some more time, that you ask a reporter to rephrase a question if you don't understand. It's always okay to ask for a take 2, and just be yourself and be honest. What we would encourage you not to do is to speculate, debate, or interrupt any of the reporters that may reach out to you. Okay, so not only does Kellyanne lead our media outreach, she also oversees our social media. So we wanted to just throw in a little bit of kind of standard social media protocol. We would say the same thing that I just said in terms of the media, a disclaimer that your views are your own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program. We would ask that you be respectful of others' opinions and avoid engaging in any sort of polarizing debate. We would encourage you to be accurate. Be sure your facts are accurate and that you do not offer assumptions, predictions, or hearsay. We want you to be transparent. If you post about the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program, please share that you are in a role as a volunteer. And then confidentiality. Everything in public meetings is public information. Offline conversations with your volunteer peers is private. So if you choose to share something, we really would advise you to think a little bit about, was this a conversation that was in a public setting, or was this a conversation between a volunteer and a volunteer, and what should remain private and confidential versus what is something that you would feel comfortable seeing on the headline of the newspaper. And I think that's it for me. So it's a very quick overview of kind of media and social media protocols. Mostly we just really wanted to provide you with some guidance, because this Interstate Bridge Replacement Program is a 2-state program. There are a lot of eyes watching and a lot of interest, which we're excited about. It also creates a different opportunity for engagement with our volunteers. We want to make sure that you're as equipped as possible. So with that, Jake.
Thank you, Lisa. And just to
Hey,
confirm.
Jake, if I can interrupt you for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yolanda Brooks from Washington State DOT, I think maybe trying to join. So she is taking the place of Bobby Forsh on the advisory group.
Great. I just admitted her to the room.
Okay, excellent.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And just to confirm for everyone, I will be sending out these slides afterwards. So you didn't need to write down all that info. You'll have it at your fingertips at your convenience. Roberta. So we're at the meeting.
Thank you. Sorry, Jake, could you repeat?
Yeah, we're at the meeting agreements, guiding norms conversation section.
Right. The one catch about that is that I can't see the slides. And I think we have some slides about that, about the guiding norms and committee member safety and whatnot.
Yes.
We have them.
Roberta, do you need me to walk through these slides?
What was that, Darnell? Oh, Greg. Hi, Greg. I can't see them.
Yeah.
So maybe if you could walk us through.
Yeah. Okay. Greg, I'm happy to. I can walk us through them.
Oh, you can see them?
Yep, I can see them. The committee, you'll recall that we went through these at our first meeting. This is a reminder, and we're hoping today that we can kind of get concurrence that these are the norms that we'll want to use as a group kind of moving forward. And so the first is to stay engaged, that we remain morally, emotionally, intellectually, and socially involved in the dialogue. At times, we will be discussing some things that we will all have strong opinions about. And it's important that perhaps when you might engage in a dialogue that, may be inconsistent with what your own thinking is, that instead of detracting that, we really ask that you sort of lean into the process. And that gets us to our next point, which is to experience discomfort, that we acknowledge that discomfort is inevitable, especially in dialogues about race, that we make a commitment to bring issues into the open. It is not talking about these issues that creates the divisiveness. And so, again, as we all know, we are committing ourselves to a consensus model, and that really rests upon our ability of really kind of wrestling with difficult challenges as a collective. So we really ask for us all to really lean into that discomfort. Jake, if you could go back to the other slide, I wasn't quite done. Scroll back a little bit, Jake.
My bad. Sorry, I was clicking something else and it moved them forward. Go ahead.
No problem. The next one is to speak your truth. Be open about your thoughts and feelings and not just saying what you think others want to hear. Again, you all have all been asked to participate on the EAG because of both your lived experience as well as the constituents that you're connected with and your professional experience. And so we really want you to bring that to bear around this table. So we really ask that you lean in and speak your truth. The next one is to expect and accept non-closure.
Commercial plan.
For us to hang out in uncertainty and don't rush to quick solutions. Really, kind of a theme that we talk a lot about is to seek first to understand. Next slide, please. So in addition to kind of our operating norms, which a nice way to think about that is sort of an operating contract that we have with one another as to how we will do our work together, are also sort of our rules of the road, ground rules, if you will. And some of these we got from all of you as we had our initial conversation. The first is to let everyone participate by listening and respecting diverse views and opinions. Listen with an open mind, value learning from different input, stay open to new ways of doing things, treat others constructively and respectfully, respect the role of the facilitator to guide the group process. As a reminder, Dr. Roberta Hunt is our facilitator, and she's been charged with helping to kind of steer our conversations. So if at times she redirects, please don't take it personally. She's really trying to keep the dialogue moving forward. Attack the problems and not the person. Again, in our spirit of sort of consensus building and respect, it's important that we have robust dialogue about various issues, but we don't take it personally. The last one is disagreement, frustrations, and differences of opinion are acknowledged, explored, and addressed. And we'll talk a little bit more about this when we go through our decision-making process. You'll recall from the orientation, we had the various cards. And so there are opportunities of doing all of that with those cards. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, there we are. Discussion. Okay, Roberta, the discussion point now is anything missing from these meeting agreements before you commit to them? And so now's the time where we want to just ask the EAG whether or not, is there anything missing? And or whether or not you are prepared to move forward with these being sort of our operating norms. And so maybe with that, we can kind of move it back to the EAG, and Jake will ask for you to kind of facilitate it, being that you can see everyone.
Yeah, and this is where we wanted to kind of just practice our consensus decision-making process. So if you have it, has anyone not received their red, green, and yellow cards? If you have not, please speak up now. Yolanda has not. That makes sense, since you're a new addition to the committee. So in that case, we'll have to kind of make this up as we go. And if you don't have a card and do want to say something in this discussion, just raise your hand. But here is what we will normally do when everyone's got them. So during discussions, and that we'll kind of model here, and also we want to acknowledge that that if you either don't have a card or there are a couple options. You can just raise your hand instead of doing this. But at green, if you can provide clarification during the discussion, you can raise your green card if you have information that you feel is pertinent to the question raised. Yellow, you can raise your card if you have a question or need clarification on something. And red is a process observation. So if something's off topic, for example, note that we need to stop, we need to get back to the topic at hand. So in this case, let's go ahead and try that on these, back to that main question we had. Is anything missing from these agreements before you can commit to them?
Hey, Jake.
Yes. Should I go back to them?
Jake, can you hear me, Jake?
Yes.
So what I'm getting, which is, just listening in, what I'm understanding is green for clarification, yellow for I have a question, and red for I have a process concern. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
And Jake, if you go to the next section there, again, recall that the cards are both used for conversation as well as decisions. And so this might be when we would want to use it for a decision. Maybe you can go through those as well.
Sure. So green in this case would be I agree with the proposal. Yellow would be I have a question that must be answered before I decide. And red is I oppose the proposal, but again, because this is a consensus decision-making process, you commit to working with the group to find a solution that works for all. So to go back, green, I agree, yellow, I have a question, and red, I oppose, but willing to work to find consensus. So I guess on this note, let's just test it out and say with these guiding norms and meeting agreements, you can either raise your green card, and I'm gonna stop sharing so that I can see people. If you agree, or if you do not have a card, or let's see, or otherwise would like to indicate, otherwise you can do a thumbs up on your, I think would be good. And even electronic thumbs up. Okay, so I'm seeing all greens. Great. Unless I'm missing something. Because now okay. Great. So any any questions there before we say these are our official guiding norms and rules of the road? Great. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next section of our meeting, and this is to Lisa. Oh, wrong one. Hold on, Lisa.
Well, Jake's pulling that up. I had the pleasure of meeting many of you at our orientation with the community advisory group. So it's great to see everyone again. And hopefully folks are warm and not having to be in their car to call in. We're going to talk a little bit about community engagement. And some of you had the benefit of a speed talking Lisa going through the community engagement slides. And I'm going to show those slides, but really I want to hear from you. So we've got some time during our meeting today where what we'd really like to be able to do is to have a conversation. We were able to do a little bit of this with our community advisory group when they met last week, and we heard some really great things. And so I don't want to move through the slides too quickly, that if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them. But I do want to get into the engagement with the EAG part of our time together. So
give me just one sec, Lisa, having some technical difficulties as
you're doing great, Jake. So as we get started, why don't I just go ahead and tell you a little bit about our community engagement program. So we have kind of some fundamental core values in terms of how we're approaching our community engagement. And a big part of that commitment involves not only the community, but our centering equity commitment. And we are really trying to ensure that we look at everything that we're doing and how we're doing it around kind of 5 core pillars, which include equity, diversity, accessibility, transparency, and inclusion. And so anytime we're looking at the work that we're doing, we're trying to use those lenses to determine, is there a way we can do this that allows for greater accessibility or for more transparency or an opportunity to create a more inclusive climate. We have a set of goals that we've identified. And what I would say, just kind of as we get started, is really that this is our community engagement approach, and it is evolving and it is dynamic. It's reflective of where we are in the program. It's reflective of the input that we're receiving, and we're continually looking at how do we improve upon this program. And we're really trying to, as we kind of launch the program, make sure that we're responsive to a real commitment to two-way feedback. So our website just went up January 15th. So we are 1 month into a shiny new website, and we're learning a lot about a lot of information relative to how do we ensure that this website and all of the materials are as accessible as they should be? How do we make sure that we're being really transparent? So I just continue to go back to kind of those core values, which Jake is on the next slide, and really use that as the way in which we're approaching our work together. And the next slide really kind of talks a little bit about our community engagement goals. So I'm going to go through these, and I'm just going to kind of tell you a little bit about what we were thinking when we put these together. But seek feedback from a diverse range of stakeholders. This is one way we're trying to do that. We are also trying to meet our community where our community is, which isn't just about languages. It's also about meeting within those communities, being a part of those communities, and having our community see leadership reflective of who they are. We want to include underrepresented and or underserved populations. We know COVID is a challenge, but that doesn't mean that we cannot do inclusive community engagement. And we're looking for ways to do that and to lift voices of historically marginalized communities. We want to embrace innovation. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the fanciest or the newest tech solution. We want to look for ways where what we're doing is something different than what's been done before. We also know that, and you'll probably hear me say this more than once, we really try to embrace a both and. So we're going to do some real traditional community outreach, and we're going to try and do things a little bit differently, a little bit more creatively. We're going to try and minimize barriers to engagement. Sometimes that is just simply a bus pass to be able to make it to a meeting. We want to make sure that we understand what those barriers are and that we're working to minimize those. And we hope that those that participated in the orientation saw we, not only supported a Black woman-owned business in Portland who literally sent 3 vans out to Southwest Washington and to the Portland metro area to deliver meals to everyone. We are trying to just find even just those small little ways to make sure that we're recognizing and reflecting the values of our community engagement and the commitment by our volunteers to participate, and trying to just take as many barriers away as possible. That's a really small example. We've got lots of ideas about how we're going to continue to do this, but I just thought that that would help you kind of spark your thinking around how do we identify, name them, and minimize those barriers. We want to demonstrate accountability. Miss Roberta, do you want to mute real quick?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. So accountability through transparency requires our ability to tell the community whether or not we are engaging in that two-way feedback. And so we have a draft kind of accountability dashboard that'll be on our website. We also believe that it's important that we have two-way feedback. And that means that when we heard you, we need to make sure you know that we heard you. And oftentimes we find community engagement is more of a check the box activity. That's not what it means for us. It also means that we may have to stop and think about the input that we've received, figure out how we utilize that input. And if we can't, then we come back to you and let you know that these are the reasons why we can't utilize that input as we move forward, or this is how your input really influenced our program and where we are right now. So we want you to know that we're trying to build trust, and the best way to do that is to be really honest and credible about where there are opportunities to influence the program and where there isn't. We also want to provide opportunities to meaningfully shape the program. And this is one way that we're trying to do that. And we're going to be really clear with you about when we need to hear your voice. And this is a critical month. Actually, at midnight tonight, we launch our community engagement online open house and a survey to gather feedback from you on purpose and need and vision and values. And Chris is here tonight. He's going to spend some more time talking about that, but this is the moment. So as we really kind of activate this community engagement program, you are going to see, as of tomorrow morning, a real need for you to weigh in on what you think. Next slide. And then the next one. So this is a timeline that will show you just this year where there are milestone moments for you to engage. That doesn't mean that we don't want to hear from you all year long, but we want you to help us get the word out as much as possible during these kind of key areas. So the first, as I mentioned, is happening right now, and that is around the purpose and need and the vision and values. The second area that we're going to look for your input is on screening criteria and the initial range of alternatives. So that's really looking at all those different alternatives that might solve this problem that we can align around, which is the need to replace an aging interstate bridge. And then by the time we get into the fall, we should be really starting to talk a little bit about those alternatives and having your feedback influence the program as it relates to narrowing that range of alternatives. There's a lot of work that's going to be done this first year. So there's great opportunities for you to provide your input and for you to help us reach communities that need to be involved in a really tangible way. Next slide. Okay, as I mentioned, online open house starts tomorrow and it closes March 1st. We also have an interactive survey. So we'll have all those links that we'll send out to you so that you can just hop on there, share it, send it out, get folks excited about being able to participate in sharing their voice. Next slide. We have some live virtual community briefings. One of the things that we think is so important is for us to be able to share with the community where we are in the program. It's difficult to weigh in on what you think about a purpose and need and a vision and value when you're not quite at the same space that we are, because we've been living this for a while, getting everyone ready to go to launch this community engagement. So we feel like allowing for an opportunity to share in a different way your feedback. So there'll be some audience participation in these 4 community briefings, but these will be opportunities for you to meet our experts, to meet those leaders that will share a little bit about where we are in the program, also be able to utilize some of our frequently asked questions to start to answer some of the questions that we've already seen come through our info box or that we've heard from partners that folks are curious about. We're excited to host a Spanish language only open house. And so that's on February 23rd. So everything, including the closed captioning, all of that event will be completely hosted by our team that are Spanish speaking. Okay, next slide. So these are all of the various 2021 outreach activities. I'm actually not going to spend any time talking about these. These will be in the slides. Likely, either myself or one of my teammates in communications will be back to talk to you about our community engagement program. I just want you to know that we're really trying to look at lots of different ways to engage with our community. Next slide. Okay. And then I think our last slide is really a couple of questions that we were hoping to create a conversation with you. And I think that I am about at my time. So Janelle and Jake, hopefully we can spend a little bit of time kind of having a conversation. I can pull up the Jamboard with these questions on it and see if folks have some insights and some thoughts about how we encourage engagement with broad representation of our community, and then any outreach strategies and approaches that you've seen that's worked well.
Yeah, I think let's go ahead and do it.
Is that okay? All right. I can take notes or I can share my screen, whatever's easiest for folks.
Yeah, if you want to share your, well,
Maybe take a question?
Let's take a break from screen sharing. And I'm
Okay.
seeing a couple
All right.
things.
Yeah,
A
looks
yellow
like,
from Lily and a hand up from Yolanda.
okay. Yolanda.
Hello, everyone. This is my first time for most of you meeting me. I'm Yolanda Brooks with Washington State Department of Transportation, Office of Equal Opportunity. Just a couple of questions, well, statements in regards to what you just showed us. In regards to the online open house, the surveys that you're doing, what are you doing to accommodate the blind, since there is a large blind population down in the Vancouver and Portland area in regards to them being able to access the surveys? Secondly, in regards to the online open houses, are you guys open to at least maybe 1 hour out of the day of having a live person on the open house to actually, if people have a question and they can have it answered in real time and actually hear someone's voice? And I see the 3 different languages that you're having the sessions in, or the information in, but have you thought about having a Slavic language? There's a large Romanian population down there. And have you considered advertising on organizations' websites to put the information on there? Have you thought about paying them to advertise on the different websites of a lot of different organizations, especially the ethnic ones?
Those are great questions. So I've got about 4 of them. I think I'm going to go ahead and ask Lily if she has any questions, and then Matt has his hand raised, and then maybe I can answer them once I've kind of collected some of those questions right now. Lily?
Yeah, thank you. This is Lily. I had a similar question to Yolanda, but slightly different, which is, and I apologize if I missed this, but will you have the ASL interpretation at those open houses? And then will you have graphics available for folks to share on social media outlets? I'm thinking about the ways that I can get the word out about this to my organization, and there's a lot of them. So if you have graphics prepared for us, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Matt?
Hi, this is Matt. So I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the importance of kind of something that's on my mind as we look to community engagement. So I would imagine that, you know, I myself was chosen because I represent the disabled population, but obviously more so the blind population, deafblind and low vision population. But I just want to kind of give us a little bit of pause for a second, because I've perceived that as somebody who's disabled coming into this process, I myself have felt like this process has definitely been geared more towards race inequity than all inequity. And so I just want to know what we can do to better make our presentations more geared towards a larger inclusivity, make our outreach and our resources intentionally accessibly born from the start. I just want to make sure we're also reaching out to the disabled population, which is an underserved and long time underrepresented population. And I think when we start to invite these disability consumer groups in, and they see the materials that we've put out, they see the website, they see our meetings, if they see us focusing just on race, and a lot of them will tune out. And so I just want to make sure we're kind of also including that as a priority, and we actually talk about it as a priority. Thank you.
That's a great comment, Matt. Thank you. Okay, so are there any other questions?
And you know, Lisa, I also want to say in conjunction with Matt, as someone who now I can't see, right? So I can't participate in the way that I would. I absolutely concur that we haven't nailed that down. I also want to not pit race against disability. And so I don't want to get into a place of saying one issue being more than the other. And I'm noting as we're doing this that we're around ability, we're not doing it the way we need to. That's all I got.
It's good. Thank you. So maybe we'll start there. So I don't disagree. I think we have room for improvement here. And I think your feedback's really helpful. So I'm not gonna, I think that it's really helpful and I've heard you. And I think we need to put together a strategy and come back at your next meeting with a plan on how we're gonna move forward. So.
Yeah, and Lisa, if I can just interject too, and 100% agree, and that's exactly, this is exactly why we set up the Equity Advisory Group. It's for this direct, unvarnished feedback, because we realize that all of you, based on your lived experience and your sort of constituencies and all of what you bring to the table is going to help to make this a much better program. And just to answer in terms of when we talk about historically marginalized communities, that also includes members from communities with disabilities. You're 100% right. There are ways for us to make that more clear, but it's also protected under federal law, and that's something that we're very mindful of as well, with respect to ADA, as well as the EJ and Title VI considerations we need to make. And so continue to hold us accountable, and we will continue to get better, but that's exactly the type of feedback we need to hear, as well as strategies and ideas. I'm hoping we can kind of hear additional strategies and ideas in terms of how do we reach a much more inclusive community, because we know our collective community is very diverse, and diversity under the large umbrella. And so we want to make sure that we're doing things to reach our whole community. So point well taken, and great thought.
So if I can jump in real quick, this is exactly why we have an equity advisory group. This is not just for the external product that we're trying to reach. This is for our process that we are going through. And all of those comments speak to our process and how we need to improve our processes as a team. So thank you for the comments, and we will work on them.
Pat, did you have a comment too? I thought I saw your hand up.
Yes, you know what it made me think of is today we had a lot of people who were not able to attend our class online because of the weather. Okay, Constructing Hope targets formerly incarcerated, and all of our participants are low income. I have to say, we also have to look at, this is a great Zoom meeting, but not everybody low income has the ability to attend a Zoom meeting. So I know it's a hard thing to think about, but we have to give computers to our guys, because everything they're doing is on their phones. Because the average person coming out of incarceration does not have a laptop. So we have to think about, as much as people we're all in it, we're not all in it. And I think that would be the same for our second language community.
Really good point. Okay, I'm going to try and address a couple of these other questions. So let's see, languages. So Sydney actually provided us with a suggestion for an additional language that we will be including. And I'm not entirely certain exactly how to pronounce it. Chuckies, I think might be Sydney. No,
it's Chuckies.
Chuckies, okay. So we'll be adding that. We do have 8 languages right now. So I think there was a mention of 3, but we are translating our materials, and our survey is accessible in Korean, Chinese, traditional, and simplified. Both Slavic languages that we're seeing predominant group that are looking for access: Ukrainian and Russian, Vietnamese, Spanish, and Somali. Our language strategy for how we reach our community is really being led by our equity group. So if there are other languages, we really want to hear from you so that we can take a look. I will add that we are printing hard copies of all of our surveys, which will be available for communities. We have liaisons that are going out to those communities, doing phone calls and actually typing in the responses and or working with them to fill in the surveys. We're also working with our community-based organizations. We've reached out to over 325 organizations, asking them to help us get the word out. Included in that community-based organization outreach is a houseless strategy, which will include hard copies so that we can utilize those organizations to help us get the word out in a way in which they'll be able to reach them. So there was another couple of questions around kind of the advertising and the graphics. So we are advertising in multiple places. We're utilizing the radio. We are utilizing digital as well as actual newspapers, and we're using social media. We also have direct mail postcards that have been mailed out to thousands of households. So we're trying a variety of different tools and tactics, and we're measuring the effectiveness of each. That's part of that accountability dashboard. And then we'll take a look at what's working and what might need to change. Let me see, graphics to share on survey, or graphics to share on social of our survey, absolutely. We're ready to send those out. Actually, we're ready to send them out in the languages that I mentioned. So the 8, looks like I got Meg's question. Okay, let's see, the 1 hour out of the day in real-time conversation, I will put that on our list to talk about in addition to a presentation around our disability approach to our community engagement. And I think ASL interpretation, great point. No, we do not have that set up. That doesn't mean that we can't set that up, but it was not part of our plan. And it's a really good comment, Lily. Looks like Matt's hand's up next. I don't want to take too much time, Jake, but a couple other comments seem like might be helpful.
Yeah, let's get Matt and Pat and then.
Yeah, I'll make this really quick. This is Matt. I forgot to mention this earlier, but as we're getting into these outreach pieces, I want to mention this because it can take some time to set up. When we start getting into actually presenting options to the communities, we're going to need some 3D manipulated representations of these projects so people physically can touch them and understand the scale. So it takes some time to set those up. So I just want to put that on the radar now, so we have some lead time for that.
That's a really great comment, because I will say over the last month since we launched our website, we have learned so much about that timeline and the need for ADA and making sure that we're compliant. And there are some things, including 130 slides for an orientation, that actually take a lot of time to make sure that we're ready to go and ready to put them online so that they're available to readers. But we can improve and we can do better. So I appreciate the comments, Matt. It actually will really help us to be able to plan ahead appropriately.
And Matt, I'll say you got a few thumbs ups from some other members when you were saying that.
Hey,
Pat?
Matt, this is
Sorry, go
Roberta.
ahead.
Matt, I was wondering, leaning into your expertise, so thinking about slides, like what is a way that we can talk through our slides better so that they're more useful for someone who is visually impaired or blind?
Yeah, thanks. This is Matt. So I'm obviously going off of what's been sent, and I don't have any issues that I've encountered as of yet as we go through these. I know the team's working really hard to get those materials out ahead of time, as well as making stuff accessible that we send out to the public. But I'm obviously, I've lent my expertise to Jake, and will continue to do so for whoever needs that going forward.
Thank you.
Pat, did you have another comment too?
No, thank you.
Okay. The timing's a good one. We have a couple hour ADA training with the whole IVR team on Thursday. So we know that this is important and we can do better. So I really appreciate the feedback and the candidness. There's a few to-dos that I have on my list, and I don't know that we have necessarily been able to kind of cover a couple of the questions that we had, but hopefully you'll reach out and let us know what your thoughts are beyond what's already been shared here. As we move forward. It's not a one-time ask. It's every meeting we want to hear from you, especially as it relates to community engagement.
And you can always email me. I will make sure that the team gets that information. So feel free. This doesn't have to be your only chance to provide input.
Okay.
Lisa, this is Fernando. I have one question. You think it would make sense for us to send out a survey? Because I think one of the things that I've captured over the last couple of meetings is that there's a very, very diverse community, right? And I think that we have to really be able to capture what that really looks like and how to define that. And so would it make sense to send out a survey to the team here and really kind of look at these basic fundamentals? Because I look at these basic fundamentals as the lens by which we look at things, right? So are we being inclusive, are we being diverse, and what does that mean? So just so we have a holistic view of what our communities believe diverse is, right? Because, you know, I deal with people of color every day, right? That's my business. But in speaking with Matt, you know, and listening to Matt, you know, it's lending me a new perspective, right? I was on a nonprofit board that was designed around second chance citizens, right? And so so there's a lot of classifications that we have to look at. I don't know if that would help us as a advisory group.
Yeah, and I'll interject here. This is John L. That's actually a great segue to our next section, which is to really start to roll up our sleeves as to how does a program really define equity. And so maybe at this point, thank you, Lisa, for attending. And Jake, why don't we move to the next section, which is around helping to kind of frame up equity.
Sounds good. Let me hopefully pull up the right PowerPoint this time. Okay, so we're a little behind, but let's, I'll try to be quick in my part on this so we can get to the small group discussions, because this is really important stuff. We have been charged as a committee to develop a project-specific definition of equity. And we are thinking about that both in terms of process and outcomes. I know when we say equity, that can mean a lot of different things to different people, but we really want to make sure we're clear on what that means. And I think that relates back really well to the conversation we were just having about community engagement. So just, I'm going to give a couple foundational definitions to sort of, I guess, start to churn your thinking, but these are by no means limiting to your thinking. I know there's a lot of expertise out there that we want to capture. But generally speaking, when we talk about equity for transportation projects, we're talking about the just and proportional allocation of burdens and benefits within the transportation system. That's kind of generally how it's thought of in the regulatory environment and in the planning environment. And I say that acknowledging that with this program, we want to go a bit further than that. John L. In the orientation really pointed to, we want to know what does a program look like that disproportionately benefits historically marginalized and underserved communities, because there are a lot of benefits that this program entails. Those two definitions, process equity and outcome equity. When we say process equity, there's a group an equity and mobility advisory committee that's currently working on looking at I-5 and I-205 tolls. And not that we want to just replicate what they've done, but they've gone through a process to come up with some definitions for their project that I thought were a good model that we can at least draw some lessons from. So process equity means that the entire planning process, actively and successfully encourages the meaningful participation of individuals and groups from historically excluded and underserved communities. So community engagement, for example. On the other hand, outcome equity, we're looking at what actually happens, what comes out of the program. It means that the program will, again, drawing from that same group on the TOL project, the program will acknowledge existing inequities. It'll strive to prevent historically excluded and underserved communities from bearing the burden of negative effects that either directly or indirectly result from the program. There are always often intentional and unintentional consequences that have major equity implications. And then the program will further seek to improve overall transportation affordability, accessible opportunity, community health. Those are the things they kind of focused on with that. And so just as kind of where our thinking is headed, that should give you kind of an overview. I guess one more thing from that Equity and Mobility Advisory Committee, they looked at 4 dimensions of process and outcome equity. They looked at full participation of impacted populations and communities, improving affordability, improving multimodal access to opportunity, and then community health, the impacts that, say, from construction or other impacts that might result from this program. So just that was a quick run through, but now I want to, we're going to break up into breakout rooms so that we can have just some smaller conversations and answer these 2 questions. What words or concepts do you think are important to include in the IBR program definition? And what should be adapted or added to make it specific to this program? In your breakout rooms, please have someone as a note taker, because we'll have you report out after. We won't be able to spend a full 20 minutes as we had hoped, but we'll probably be able to spend 5 to 10, and then we'll do a quick report out. So with that, let's do this breakout room action. And if you are someone who's just observing in the Zoom, feel free to, I'm going to automatically assign folks, but you can leave, you can, whatever you're wanting to do. Okay.
And Jake, just real quickly, could you put those questions back so folks can kind of record those? That went by pretty fast there.
Yeah. And if there was a chat, I would put that in there, but we do not have that. Okay. So here are those 2 questions again. What words or concepts should we include from what we were looking at? And if I sent out the equity and context document along with the materials, that also has those definitions I went through on the slides. And then what should be adapted or added? Everyone got that? Okay. I'm going to put us into, I'm going to try 4 breakout rooms, and we'll see if that does it. Actually, I think we only need to do 3. All right. And it should invite you, so just go ahead and accept that invite.
notes.
All right, welcome back. That was admittedly not near enough time to talk about these very big issues. Yeah, that's the challenge we are working with here.
Hey, Jake.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Are you going to ask the facilitators to email you some of their notes?
Yes.
So that we're able to capture those notes?
Yes. I would like the notes, and then up to you, Roberta, whether you feel that we should just go with those notes or whether you want to do a Jamboard for the report out.
How about definitely the notes, because I think the notes are going to be quite, at least from my group, our note taker, I think, had a lot to write down. And I also took notes, but I'm writing them in the dark. So,
right.
But
in addition,
right. So I think, how about we do Jamboard for about 5 minutes, and maybe you can also talk through. People can share ideas as well verbally if they would like.
Great. Okay. So let's start with room number 1, which had Janelle and Matt and Karen.
So I'll go ahead and I was the recorder. So a few notes that the group talked about. The definition should include any displacement language. You know, an emphasis that we really need to have displacement language in the definition. It should be included as an outcome or equity statement. That we need to acknowledge the climate crisis and environmental impacts, that we emphasize environmental justice, that climate crisis needs to be named to emphasize a sense of urgency. It needs to be clearly implied. That it's important that we acknowledge how we got here. We talk a lot about sort of the challenge history that the interstate system and government has relative to communities of concern, that acknowledgement is critically important, but that we just don't name sort of what occurred. We also illustrate and you know, we're intentional about opportunities of how we collectively move forward. This isn't just about building a bridge, but it is also about centering historic marginalized communities. How do we use the bridge to catalyze positive, impactful change for historically marginalized communities? And the last one is, it's really important for us to acknowledge our indigenous communities, that we really respect the ancestral burial grounds, and we figure out sort of how to manage that. And that if there is to be a bridge naming process, that process really centers equity, that perhaps the bridge be named by, you know, sort of indigenous community or something through the lens of equity. So that's what we had.
Great, thank you. And I'm frantically typing these, there's typos. It's not going to adequately capture everything, but again, we'll have the notes. Room 2, which was the large group, it didn't work out to be even. So whatever room had like 8 people. Who is the reporter?
I believe that was us, huh? So, so Chris Lepe here, everybody. Hello, and I was a note taker for our group, and on the project team for those that haven't met me yet. And so some of the comments that emerged from our group included that a lot of the definitions were quite long, they're really wordy, and that ideally our definition would be more to the point and also more equity forward. We need to move past harm reduction and need to move past stopping the bleeding and really look at some of the some of the wording that's been used even earlier today with the concept of disproportionate benefits. There was also a comment about the need to start off with an element of aspiration. What are we really trying to achieve as it relates to equity? Also a commitment to resourcing. And then finally, making sure that transparency and accountability are core pillars of the project. I also note that there was also a comment about receiving key questions for discussion ahead of time so that each participant can make sure to check in with their respective communities and connections, right? The folks that they are being asked to represent, so that they can bring those perspectives whenever possible to these discussions.
Yes, thank you.
For those in my group, if I missed anything, feel free to chime in.
All right, and then the last group.
I was the note taker, I think, for the last group, and I'll ask my colleagues to chime in if I'm misrepresenting something. We only managed to get through the first question, and the concepts that came up was the definition should at least highlight the idea of fairness and accessibility in it, and the definition should consider how to pay homage to historic, present, and almost future inequities that could be created and how to address those. And the concept also should really be clear about what is meant by equity, considering that folks have been that word, can't pronounce it right now, disenfranchised, and that could continue. So the concept should really think through how to address that. And so being explicit about existing inequities. Colleagues, if I've misrepresented anything, please chime in.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. I know there's a lot of great thinking there, and what I'm going to do next, we had a conversation about you were thinking about equity at our last meeting. Take these conversations and notes, and then we're going to bring you a draft definition for your next meeting. So moving quickly, but hopefully we'll be able to get to something that we can all agree to. So the next section, I am going to introduce Chris Regan to talk to us about these words we keep saying: purpose and need, vision and values. And Chris, I'll pull up the PowerPoint and just hand it off to you.
Thanks, Jake. Hi, Chris Regan, Environmental Manager for the IBR team. Wonderful to share space with you again. I'm going to jump in real quick and give you a quick discussion of what we were talking about last we met last Saturday, and then we're going to jump into some specific words. So the key milestones that we have in front of us for developing alternatives really starts in the planning and environmental phase. And the idea here is we're in the planning environmental. By 2024, we should get to a place where that is done and we start design. And then in 2025, we're going to begin construction. To get there, what we need to do is create the foundation for the environmental process documents that we're working on. We've got a lot of information from previous planning work, and we're using that, we're picking that up, but we've got to understand how things have changed. And so what we need to do is define and recommend purpose and need and vision and changes to purpose and need and vision and values. From the vision and values, we'll develop screening criteria that's going to help lead us to alternative concepts that are going to end up being design considerations, things that'll change on what we need to do to replace the bridge. We're going to evaluate those alternatives, finalize, see how much they change, and if there are massive changes, we'll go through an environmental review process, narrowing down those alternatives into a locally preferred alternative, and then advancing and finalizing the design. And again, finalizing that design 2024, leading to construction in 2025. Right now, what we're doing is looking at those building blocks that we need to identify the problems and to screen alternatives to meet those the program's needs and our community's values. Next slide, please, Jake. So the role of the Equity Advisory Group in defining purpose and need and vision and values, we really need help ensuring that the language that we come up with in these building blocks fully considers the potential impacts, both positive and negative, on historically marginalized communities. So for example, what are the equity implications of inadequate bicycle and pedestrian facilities? That's something that we really want you to look at the language and help us think about things and see if we're missing anything. Also, help us consider how the needs are distributed among various communities. Is the focus equitable? How might we modify our focus to ensure historically underserved communities benefit while avoiding or minimizing burdens? So this is the role of the Equity Advisory Group. It's applying an equity lens to the work that we're doing based on, and again, I'm a technocrat, I'm leading through a technical process. I need your help. We all need your help to ensure that equity lens looks into these building blocks as we go forward. So next slide, please, Jake. And I believe this one's yours.
Yeah, so we have some more discussion. And I think we'll just stay as a big group for this one. We have three pretty big questions here that are trying to get to this, how we really truly incorporate equity at this stage of the program. So what we want to pose to you, and we don't need to go through these in order or anything. I think we just want you all to provide your thoughts here. I am going to be taking notes on this. So, and actually if my other program colleagues could do that as well, that'd be great. The first, what we're trying to get to here is when you're thinking about historically marginalized, underserved communities, those folks who this committee is really focused on, that often don't have decision-making authority. What about this program is particularly important in your view to those groups, to those communities? What elements would a new bridge or new structure, whatever the form ends up being, what should it have so that it's responsive to and supportive of the needs of those communities? And then finally, throughout the whole process, planning, designing, building, how can we focus on the needs of those who experience transportation barriers? Can the program address, can it fix some of these problems? So really just looking at this bridge, this program through these lenses, we want to hear your thoughts here. Again, a lot, but we hope we can have a good conversation.
And Jake, I mean, I'm going to lead through some language as well, and so we can, maybe that'll kickstart folks, but we'll pause a little bit and see if anybody has anything to say here before doing
Yeah, maybe we can stop here and just kind of open it up. So what are folks' thoughts as you ponder these three sort of concepts? And as Jake indicated, no order. We're going to record your thoughts.
So Yolanda.
So I see Yolanda. Yep.
The first thing that came to my mind in regards to number one is don't victimize them again. They've already been victimized historically. Let's not revisit that if we can avoid it, at least not without their buy-in.
Great. Lee?
Yeah, I definitely agree with Yolanda, and I'm also thinking about how we think about transit specifically in all this. Being a part of the bus riders union in the metro region, transit users often don't get heard or don't get considered, and it's often as an afterthought. And if we think about the drastic need to shift away from single occupancy vehicles, I think the question on my mind is how do we actually prioritize transit in a way that allows for our communities to shift towards more communal forms of transportation more broadly. So whether that's like a specific bus lane or a line that goes through this space, I think anything that we can do to not just center cars in this process.
Thank you, Lee. Well said.
Fernando, I think that with regards to question number 2, what elements do you think a new bridge structure should have to be responsive? I think that one of the things that I was thinking about is how do we begin to prepare the people that live in the community so that they can be part of this structure, so that they can be part of the construction, so that they can be part of everything that goes into building this facility, right? So if we have communities of color where we can support the vocational school system, where we can support the community colleges with vocational systems and get students from these communities ready to work on these projects, right? I think there's a lot of work that we can do to help them be part of this structure. Outside of making sure that they're part of the planning, that these communities are part of the planning, the communities that we represent, we're part of the planning. How do we set the table so that the communities can participate? How do we set it so that our communities of color that maybe don't have access to some of the trade schools have access to the trade schools? So that's one of the things. When I think about question number 3, I think about how do we identify those firms that have the architects that come from communities that have been disenfranchised, from communities that have not been equitably treated. And I think about, we have Latino architects, we have African-American architects, we have Asian architects. How do we get them involved in this process and make them an integral part of the process versus just giving it to one big firm, 2 big firms, and then they take 99% of the lion's share, and there's no real growth for our communities. So I'm looking at this from an equitable, from an equitable as well as economical approach. Is how do we set the table so that everything that we do going forward, so that when construction begins in 2024, that we have a roadmap where we can say we sent 1,000 students through vocational school, they're ready to work on this project. We've got 100 architectural firms, engineering firms put together that can support this build out. I think that's where I would go with this.
Great, thank you. Let's see, Yolanda and Lee, are your hands still up or are they up again?
My hand is still up, but if somebody else is there, let them talk first.
My hand is also still up, but I'll say the same thing as Yolanda if anyone else wants to speak.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't just remnant from when you had it. So other thoughts before we?
I have one. I couldn't figure out how to do my hand raise, but when I'm sorry, the gentleman that just spoke and he was talking about trades and employment, I was thinking along the same lines in that, I want to say we should be looking at how do low-income people who are using the transportation get to prominent employment sites. So we talked about trades and how to get access there. I don't know what the connections are going to be for people to get to other places. Because I know for sure that there's very limited transportation to get out to the trades in Northeast Portland.
So kind of in addition to the process of building it itself and planning it, also just the what opportunities and connections it makes as a result.
Right, because if we're talking about benefiting the people who don't have cars, and also are we looking at how do we get people who do drive to work every day to take public transportation?
Okay, thank you.
I have something to add. This is Shona. I like the idea of thinking beyond once the bridge replacement actually happens, like how in the process of planning and engagement of the community, can we think beyond the bridge and see this as an opportunity to kind of bring folks together, agencies, nonprofits, to invest in some of the communities that might be impacted by this whole process and potentially left out. Like, I just imagine, like, what else could we do beyond just engaging the community around this bridge replacement, but what can we put in place along the way, a collaborative alongside of the bridge project that ensures that the communities that you're looking at now can continuously be invested in going forward.
That's great, thank you.
This is Yolanda, so I'll go ahead and chime in now. A couple of different things. In regards to the barriers for some people, that the affordability, because sometimes people think buses don't cost a lot. They think trains don't cost a lot. However, if you're the one having to pay that every day, it does cost a lot. So there has to be some kind of way to keep the cost to ride the buses low, because otherwise you might as well drive. Secondly, in regards to some of the elements of the new bridge, someone spoke on maybe having the indigenous people possibly name the bridge or something to that effect. Can there be something in the design of the bridge that would accentuate the different cultures and the different ethnicities that live in the area? Maybe have something incorporated in the design of it, that maybe something that shows, that focuses on African American, then another section that focuses on Hispanics, another section that focuses on the Asian community, and another one that focuses on the disabled community, something that's actually incorporated in the bridge, or maybe along the walking path when we have the pedestrian walk. Maybe have something incorporated in there that focuses on the different communities in the area. And in regards to the elements of a new bridge, the bridge should, I know it's going to be a toll bridge. I hate tolls, but so I avoid the bridges that have tolls on them. But if there's any way, I know we have to toll it, but if there's any kind of way to, and even if it's like we have the good to go pass, if we can, even we don't do it over here, but if there's a way to maybe give some, if to low income people that have to get back and forth across the bridge and aren't using the bus, maybe some type of good to go pass that has a certain amount of money on it to go back and forth. And if they use it all up, then they have to come out of their own pockets, or some kind of bus pass, something to make getting back and forth across the bridge affordable. Because right now it doesn't cost them anything to go across the bridge. Now it's going to, once the bridge is done, it's going to cost them something to go back and forth across the bridge. And a lot of people's incomes aren't going to be commensurate to what the cost is to go back and forth across the bridge. So there's barriers that just because the bridge is going in and it's going to be tolled that are now going to affect the underserved and historically marginalized communities.
Absolutely.
Just by the mere fact that the bridge is needed, but by the mere fact that bridge is going to be tolled is an automatic going to affect everyone. So we need to figure out a way to make it affordable, even if it's making sure that a certain amount of money on a bus pass so that they can jump on a bus, or make van pool vans that you don't have to have 6 people, you can maybe have 3. So because everyone doesn't go to work at the same time. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Mona. Why don't we have Lee, let's hear your comment, and then I'll turn it back to Chris, and we're actually going to return to these questions with a little bit more information, but Lee, go ahead.
I love everything that has been said so far, and definitely just want to echo those sentiments. Kind of building off the idea of like how we build community into the infrastructure, I think I would just like to focus like the relationship between the areas that we are bridging. So like, what is the relationship that we're striving for? How do we want these communities to relate to each other, and what can we build into a bridge to actually build and accentuate that relationship, especially considering the geographical differences, the boundaries, the lines that are crossed are very significant. So how do we bring communities together through this? And then kind of building off the tolling thing, I actually don't know how it works if you're like crossing the bridge on a bus in an area that is tolled, so I guess any way that we can like reduce tolling for anyone that is like lower income is really important. And then I was reading about like bike stress earlier, and how there are like these measures for folks who are biking that talk about stress levels, and any sort of like separation we can have between like pedestrians and bikers from cars, I think is really important, because it just sucks to, as someone who has like walked across bridges, it can be really frustrating to have to be next to cars and like inhaling pollution. And then my last comment, which I feel a little bit awkward bringing into this space, but I feel like has to be named, is like safety, especially in terms of just acknowledging that like, I don't know any other way to say this, I have racked my brain, but that like people jump off of bridges. So I think just thinking about like, how do we have like, you know, hotlines for folks? How do we like think about mental health, people who are like suffering from mental health disorders? Because bridges aren't just infrastructure that transport people. So many other things happen on bridges. So I think that's something I would like to be considered.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Okay, so I know we're at 7:20. So Chris, I have not left you a whole lot of time to go through this stuff, but do your best.
Thanks, Jake. I love a challenge. When do I need to stop?
Well, we need to do public comment. So if you can do this in 5 minutes, that would be awesome.
Thank you for that framing. I apologize for going quick. There's a lot of information. I'm just going to touch on this. So as we jump into NEPA, what we do is we look at a purpose and need statement. The needs for the program are really built to answer the question, we undertake the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program to fix this need at the site. It's technical, But when you start thinking about what belongs there, what is a need, that is really the statement that we are trying to fill. We undertake interstate bridge replacement program to fix this need at the site. Next slide, please, Jake. So what we're looking at right now is a purpose statement concisely identifies what the proposed action is intended to accomplish. It's stated very broadly enough that more than one solution can be considered. And needs are problem statements. It explains why the proposed action has been undertaken and identifies existing or expected future problems within a defined area. Next slide, please. So for example, the previously identified needs, there were 6 of them. Seismic vulnerability of the bridge, the infrastructure itself, substandard bicycle and pedestrian facilities, limited public transportation operations, connectivity and reliability, growing travel demand and congestion, safety and vulnerability to incidents, impaired freight movement. Next slide. So within each one of these, there's more words. And with growing demand for more public transportation options, some of the words that might resonate more with the Equity Advisory Group, something that I want you to look at, ridership growth is constrained by access, reliability, and low customer satisfaction. Constrained ridership growth is an equity concern for transit-dependent populations. A lack of access to transportation options limits access to jobs and community resources. Next slide, please. The community vision and values then is really a statement that's hoping to answer this question. To uphold community values, the program must address this. And so if you think of a vision or a value statement, it should fill in with that sentence. To uphold community values, the program must address this. Next slide, please, Jake. So why community vision and values? What do? Guide program development, and they are the foundation for developing criteria and performance measures to evaluate alternatives. So for example, criteria are lined up against each other to determine which alternative satisfies which criteria. One alternative may do better than another with bike or pedestrian access or transit. This allows the program to see which does what to make informed choices. So one alternative may be better than another in bike peds, another one might be better than the other in transit. And you can see those across the spectrum when you create these vision and values. Next slide, please, Jake. Previously identified vision and values include community quality of life, mobility, reliability, accessibility, modal choice, safety, regional economy and freight mobility, stewardship of natural and human resources, equity, cost effectiveness and financial resources, by state and local cooperation and community engagement. Next slide, please. I think I'm gonna have to go really quick here, Jake. So equity includes, some statements in the vision and values have included acknowledging past disproportionate impacts, creating an inclusive community vision, supporting equity as both an outcome and a process, ensuring the equitable distribution of benefits and adverse effects of the program for the region, communities and neighborhoods. I think I'm going to skip over the next slide. Sorry.
Yeah, we probably don't have time to go back to this, but if you all could take a few minutes considering all that, I'll send out the slides, and perhaps approach it from both sides, given that previous context when the last time this initiative was undertaken to replace the bridge, and then also just freely thinking. We want new ideas. We want to know how this time around we can incorporate equity even outside of the frame of whatever was created last time. So some homework. I know you all have been so great in giving us your time into this, but unfortunately it's hard to cram it all into 2 hours. So thank you, Chris. And thank you all for your tolerance of our rushed agenda as we try to do all this. All right, so now we have public comment, and Brent, can you, if you're there, has anyone dialed in to give public comment?
No one has dialed in to give public comments.
Okay. Well, if you are on the YouTube line and are wanting to, do so now or forever hold your peace. We have these rules up that we will be enforcing if anyone, we haven't experienced a problem with this, but just to be clear, comments are not to address any individual member of the group, no harassment, and then we'll limit your comments to 2 minutes, and we will be meaning to cut you off. So if you're on YouTube, the phone number that should be in the YouTube comments or on the YouTube description, the phone number and instructions there to raise your hand, which is *9. And anyone can provide these comments outside of these meetings by emailing, calling, and we will follow up with you. So I don't think we have anyone who is signing up. So with that, Roberta, yeah, Chris.
Jake, sorry, I just kind of to tie up the last rush little bit of the presentation. Our hope was that we would go through some of that language, that it might trigger something in your thoughts of applying an equity lens, and that you might have some comments that you could get back to us. So that was the homework assignment. Thank you, Jake, for being able to send out those slides, but you saw a little bit of how we're hoping to touch on these issues. If you see anything there that you're concerned about, that you think is a good, or that you feel needs to go farther, please share those comments with us. Really would appreciate it. So thanks, Jake.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, Roberta, you want to close this out for us?
Great. You can hear me okay?
Yep.
Oh, good. All right, and Chris, I'm sure you've already dropped your contact information. Is it that you want the communication to come straight to you, Chris, or that you'd like it to come to Jake first?
This is Chris. Jake can handle that. That's great. Thanks.
Yeah, if you can send it to me, that would be awesome.
Perfect. All right, so our next meeting is Monday, March 8th from 5:30 to 7:30. We have 3 minutes. If we can, how about we'll just do, please share either a takeaway from today or something that you want to put a pin in for us to focus on going forward. Either so a takeaway or something that you want for us to focus on, or a suggestion. You can either write it in you can't write it in the chat. So how about if we can just have a few voices to close us out? And I'll let Jake, because Jake can see everyone, if people raise their hand or or just interject.
Meg, go ahead.
Hi, this is Meg. I just wanted to reiterate how impactful and important it has been to hear how our equity advisory committee needs to be more equitable in the space that we have for all of the members that are interacting here. So making sure that we do participate well with blind or low sight individuals, making sure that we have access for deaf or hard of hearing people, and actually have captions or something. We need to do better within our own space if we are to expect to also assume responsibility for being equitable in this project.
Thank you, Meg.
And this is Yolanda. I'm just going to chime in and to assist Matt Hines. If you guys need someone else to assist with the blind community or the disabled community, I'm volunteering my supervisor, who's the assistant director of the Office of Equal Opportunity. His name is Larry Watkinson. He actually graduated from the school for the blind. and he is our ADA person for WashDOT. So he's like our go-to person for any of the projects when they have questions in regards to it. So if you need any assistance in that arena, please feel free to reach out to Larry Watkinson.
Thank you, Yolanda.
This is Pat, and I'm just going to quickly chime in and just say I'm really happy to hear how we're working on including the information, answering the why. Because I think, a lot of times this has been happening for years and we all talk about equity, but a lot of people still are having a hard time wrapping their head around the why.
Agreed.
How about one more voice to close us out?
No one wants that pressure, Roberta.
All right, then I think we're done. Okay, thank you, everybody. And we look forward to doing this again on March 8th from 5:30 to 7:30. Thank you all so much. And please be safe and well, and get your thoughts to Jake. We really want them. So thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.